Today I wanted to talk about Daredevil issue number 180. This was published with the cover date of March 1982, so this probably came out in December 81, probably December 81. I was still in high school. And at the time, the two best or hottest selling comics from Marvel were Daredevil and the Chris Claremont John Byrne X-Men. And a lot of times when you go back and you read these older comics, they really don't read well. They don't read well because the writing style is different. Comics tend to be more cinematic. The dialogue is more like TV. There's a lot of old Stan Lee influence and Roy Thomas influence with, like even the Claremont books where they would want to write like a Russian novel in every panel. But these books still, after 40 years, really hold up pretty well. And that's because Frank Miller, the reason why he rose to fame was that he was the first creator that on a long-running story did a very cinematic approach with letting the storytelling tell the story and keeping the language sparse when sparse works. He was the first guy to do this, and it blew everybody's mind. It blew my mind. You would read this thing in 5 minutes and then you have to wait another month. That was the only kicker. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is that I just wanted to focus on one page. Just to set the storyline, Daredevil is contacted by reporter Ben Urich. He believes that he sees Vanessa, the Kingpin's wife, who was believed to be dead, survived, and she looks homeless. And they follow her, they track her down to this basically underground world beneath the sewers, where Daredevil and Ben Urich are captured, and they're being held prisoner by this really gross albino-looking dude here, and he's the king there. So, because he came into their lair, Daredevil and Ben Urich are overwhelmed. They're tied up, and they're dropped into this tank here where there's an alligator, and basically that's how they're going to meet their death. And the reason I want to talk about this one page is that you just have them here hanging. You see the thread, the rope breaking, it pops, and there's that one moment, like it pops in that one moment suspended, and then they just drop. They hit the water, and immediately Daredevil is trying to like bite through this material that's binding them. Ben Urich has his eyes wide in horror as all of a sudden you see this huge alligator in the water. And the reason why I think this is so effective is that if this would have been Stan Lee or Roy Thomas, and I don't want to like diss Stan Lee and Roy Thomas, but let's just be honest, we would have been having a scene where Daredevil like, must expand my breathing so I can, when I contract and exhale, the ropes will be looser, or oh, must think of a way out of this, and all these word balloons that nobody's really thinking of in real life. I mean, they're just there. You know what's going on. This little detail of Ben Urich's glasses just being disconnected from his head because of the impact of the water is a really good and realistic touch. And then you immediately have Daredevil trying to go into action, and you see Ben Urich, and you just see this threat of the alligator. And there's none of this, oh, or big yellow boxes telling you, our heroes, plunge into the icy cold black death while death approaches and all this other stuff. You didn't need all that stuff. Even back then, when I was reading these, I would get tired of that. You didn't need all this. This was so fresh, because if you can do the storytelling right, you don't need that. I've seen too many Roy Thomas comics where John Buscema is drawing a sequence in Conan, and you can tell what Conan's doing because of the great storytelling that John Buscema can do. But then Roy Thomas is telling you what Conan's doing. It's like, but we can already tell what he's doing because the storytelling is there, because he's such a damn good artist. That's the one thing I don't like about older comics, and when you read them, it's like really hard to read. Just to finish this sequence, starts as a 3-page sequence where this happens, and then he's still trying to bite through these material binding them. They break through right when the alligator comes by, and the alligator's going after Ben Urich, and then Daredevil is trying to like tie this alligator's mouth shut. Ben swims to the surface, and the only word that you have here is one thought balloon, and he thinks, Matt. And that's all. This is so effective because like I said, if it would have been 60 style, 70 style, this would have been a bunch of yellow boxes with balloons, and it would have just like taken away. If the storytelling is good, and not everybody can do this kind of storytelling, even today, but if it's good, you don't need the words. The action is telling you what's happening. And this is why Frank Miller, rose to great heights and was signed by DC, because he was the first guy doing this. And kudos, even though Jim Shooter gets a lot of crap as editor-in-chief, for a lot of good reasons, he let guys do different things. And this is why I look at these books and they're just so good, because if you don't need the dialogue, why put it in there? Less is more. But, a lot of people still to this day don't. I mean, they just put a lot of dialogue. Like you read a Bendis or a Tom King book and there's just a lot of dialogue that really just, to me, it's almost like they're just padding time in the book. It doesn't really add very much. Just so you know, our hero obviously gets away and he rescues Vanessa. And this is part of that ongoing Kingpin, Electro, Bullseye storyline that was in Daredevil during his run. But I just really wanted to talk about these 3 pages, because this is why I loved this book. And this was the first book when I would get my books every month. This was the first book I would read because it was just the best book. Nobody was doing this kind of stuff. And even after this, nobody really did this kind of stuff in Big 2 Comics. Everybody was still stuck in that Roy Thomas, Stan Lee mode of, we got to write 1 million words and we got to let the audience spoon feed them what's going on, because I understand that a lot of little kids read this and maybe that's beyond them. So you're trying to help them at the time, at least. But, for people that were if you're a teenager, I was in high school and I could understand what was going on. And if I can do that, I think people need to give kids and young people a lot more credit for being intelligent than they do back then and even today. So that's really what I want to talk about. I got this in a $1 bin. It's a reader copy. It's all yellowed, but it's a great read. And if you can ever pick up the collected works from this run, you should. It reads really well today, which is a really hard trick to pull off, because if you try to read a Fantastic Four comic from 20, 30 years ago, that's a grind. Anyway, thanks.